Hi guys, it's Priya and welcome back. Thank you so much for your response to the video I had put up about the 3-month advice leading up to the CAT exam. This video is a continuation of that. I had promised you that I would put out a video detailing the mock analysis strategy that I use for my own CAT exam so that you could pick up some tips and tricks as to see what you need to analyze in your own performance. So if you haven't seen the previous 3-month advice video, I would suggest that you watch that first. I will put it in the I and in the description box below. But once you see that video, you should come back to this and bring a piece of paper and pen or a digital note-taking device if that's what you use, because I'll be giving you several criteria that you have to go through and some points that you should keep in mind when you're analyzing your mocks. It's a long list. I've written everything down, and hopefully this will give you an overview as to everything that you need to know when you're analyzing mocks, and I hope that it'll help you in your actual CAT exam. So we start with all the objective criteria that you need to check off before you get into actually analyzing the mocks. The first thing that I've written down is overall performance, and this includes your percentile score. Now, a lot of people on YouTube would tell you that this is not necessary when you're analyzing your mocks, that you don't have to care about your percentile or how you've performed in comparison to other test takers. I am not of the same opinion, for the simple reason that at the end of the day, what score you get, how many questions you solve, doesn't matter. It matters, what matters is your percentile. And the percentile is always a comparative basis. So you could solve 50% of the questions, but if the rest of the country has solved less than 49% of the questions correctly, then you become the 100 percentiler because you are the one who has scored the highest. That's how percentiles get calculated. Which is why it becomes very important to see where you stand in terms of others so that you have a rough idea about where you need to be, right? I keep getting this question about what is the ideal percentile to get into IIM Ahmedabad, and I always say the same thing. Don't aim for like a particular score or a number of questions or a percentile. Always aim for the 99 percentile, and that basically means you have to be better than 99% of the other people taking the exam. So it is important to see where you stand. Next, you have to look at your sectional performance, and by this I mean you have to analyze your percentile and your net correct questions in VARC, in LRDI, and quantitative ability, which is QA. Now, what I mean by this is that you have to identify which of these sections is your strong suit. For me, it was VARC. Right from the outset, I used to get good scores in VARC in terms of both percentile and overall score. How this helps you in the next 2 months is that if you refer to my previous video, I had said you have to give 2 hours at least to each section going forward. If you see that one of these sections of yours is your strong suit, you don't have to work as hard at this as the other sections, right? So if you're consistently, you've seen that you're scoring well in say VARC or LRDI, it means that you can, moving forward, put less effort or less time into one section and focus on the other sections, because at this point you have to optimize the time that is available to you. And if you see that you are being able to manage one section better than the others, it's okay if you just practice it for now instead of constantly trying to improve at it, because at the end of the day you have to meet all sectional cutoffs, and excelling in one section of course will get you an overall high percentile, but if you don't meet the sectional cutoffs for all the sections, then it won't do you any good. The thing is question level analysis. Of course I'll get into this further down in the video, but what I mean by this is you should go through every question to see which ones you answered correctly and incorrectly and which ones you couldn't answer at all, and focus on the questions that you got wrong and try to identify the reasons for your mistakes. Don't worry, I'll explain this to you in a little bit. Next, you see that in the data that your mocks provide to you, they also provide to you the time management or the time you spent per question, right? Look at how much time you took on each question during the mock test. If it took you 6 minutes to solve a question, take it from me right now, that is not a good idea. Don't attempt that question in the next mock you take. Even if it comes in the CAT exam and you know how to solve it, don't waste your time doing it. 6 minutes is too long to be taken for one question, right? If you spend too much, you have to check if you're spending too much time in a particular section, in a particular set. Are you finding it difficult to move on from a set? Were you able to see all the questions in a section? You have to figure all of this out, see what your average time per question is, and adjust your time management strategy accordingly. The next thing that you have to check for is accuracy and speed. This is a very important thing to do. A lot, like when I keep saying that you have to get 8 net correct questions in a section or 10 net correct questions in a section, what that means is that either you increase your number of attempts or you increase your accuracy. You can get 8 net correct questions by just solving 8 questions, or you can get 8 net correct questions by solving 24, and after you cut out all the negatives, you get 8 net correct in total, right? You have to analyze whether you sacrificed accuracy in your attempt or if you sacrificed speed. In trying to solve fast, did you get questions wrong? And you have to see the consistency with which you have done this. Are you always sacrificing accuracy for speed? Are you always solving extra questions in which, in Hindi you say harbadi mein, you're getting too many questions wrong? You have to the aim is to balance the two. The next thing that you have to look at is topic level analysis. Within each section, you have to break down your performance into subtopics. And it's easy to do in arithmetic, right? In math, in quant, because in quant you have, subtopics: time, speed, distance, time and work, percentages, all of that. In VARC, this could be RCs, parajumbles, summary type questions. You could go even finer into it by, is it theme type questions, is it meaning type questions, is it inference type questions? These are all subtopics that you have to analyze, and you have to figure out what are the areas you always get right, what are the areas you never get right. For example, I never got a question right in geometry. However much I tried, even the easiest of triangle questions I couldn't get right. So I knew that this was not my strong suit. I tried to improve it for a little while. I figured that I was still getting half of them wrong. So when the actual CAT came, I didn't even try to attempt the geometry questions. I knew that this is a topical part that I'm not good at, so I moved on from it. And finally, you have to look at your test taking strategy, and you have to see if it's working well in the mock. For example, did you skip the correct questions? Did you attempt all questions? Did you get questions correct because of flukes, or did you make educated guesses? There's a difference between a fluke and an educated guess, and did you do that correctly, right? Of course, if you want, I can make a video about my own personal test-taking strategy maybe in 2 weeks' time. But let's stick to analyzing mocks for this video. There are 2 ways in which you can analyze mocks, and both of them have their own plus points and negative points, and their own supporters on YouTube and on other platforms. I'll give you both, and I'll tell you the one that I personally used. Now, you choose the how to analyze your mock depending on what your aim is to learn from it, right? Are you checking to see if your conceptual clarity is strong, if you have any knowledge gaps, or are you testing your test-taking approach? Are you seeing if your strategy of approaching this entire situation is all right? Now, if you're checking for knowledge gaps or to see if your conceptual clarity is strong, I would suggest that you don't analyze your mock immediately. You analyze it 1 week after you have taken the mock. Give your brain the time to forget everything that you have done in that mock, and when you take that mock again, you take it without the pressure of time. You just solve the whole thing from the beginning to the end. What this does is you get to figure out all the gaps in your knowledge. What can you do if you have unlimited time, if you have no sort of time pressure on you, right? Out of 78 questions, when you have no time limitation, when you have no pressure, are you able to accurately solve 60 to 65 questions? Because when you solve 60 to 65 questions correctly without time pressure, within time pressure, you'll probably be able to do 50 or 45, right? I think Arun Sharma sir had said this in a session that he had taken. You have to do this to be able to know how well you perform under pressure and what mistakes you make. Next, once you have solved the whole thing, you also get to know what your strong points are. You know if you're good at arithmetic, and if you have the time, will you be able to solve an arithmetic question properly? If you have the time, will you be able to solve a parajumble question correctly? Once you know that, your focus then can shift to improving your speed in doing it. But again, in solving the whole thing, if you realize that even with the time you can't suppose you can't solve a seating arrangement question at all, no matter how much time you give it, you have to look at the answer to be able to solve it. You just know that there's no, with just 2 months remaining, there's no scope for you to try to practice it and improve yourself at it, right? You can know that maybe when the CAT exam comes, unless you have no other option, this is perhaps a set that you should skip, because even when you had all the time in the world, you weren't able to solve it properly. You have solved it completely and you see what your conceptual base is. You go back to your actual mock and make some comparisons, right? You check about the difficulty levels and how much time it took to solve in the actual mock exam and when you were solving it without time pressure. You see how much you actually scored, you see what you got wrong, and if it was a silly mistake, would you have not got it wrong if you weren't taking pressure on yourself? What is your conversion ratio? that means is if you are solving 10 questions, are you getting 10 questions correct? Or if you're solving 10 questions, are you just getting 5 questions correct? Do you make silly mistakes? Do you tend to forget formulae or the way of solving a question under time pressure? Do you face any conceptual errors? All of this is what you take in mind if you solve the mock 1 week later. Now, the next way to analyze a mock is to analyze it just a day or two after taking the mock. In this case, you're testing your test taking strategy and your approach to solving questions. You take it within a day so that it's clear in your mind why you approached a particular question in a particular way. You know your reasoning behind choosing one option in VARC, choosing one, the author means this instead of the other, so that when you're analyzing it, you can remind yourself what your reasoning was, and you can better understand why the answer was wrong in case it was wrong. Because when you're analyzing mocks, it is more important to understand why the other options were wrong than to analyze and figure out why the option that is correct was correct. What I mean by that is that when it comes to VARC, for example, elimination is the key to solving a good RC passage, right? So once you start to figure out how to know that an option is wrong, if it's an extreme statement, if it has too many data points, if it's got too many examples, if it's trying to explain too much at the same time, all of these are reasons that make it wrong. Once you know what your own approach was when you approached the question, and you match that with the solving solution that is provided with the mock, you can compare the two to see if your thought process is clear. Because for a lot of questions, be it VARC, be it LRDI, you have to figure out your thought process. If you took one particular method of solving an LRDI question, was there a faster method that you could have used but that you didn't use, right? In the case where you are analyzing to test your approach and you analyze the mock within 1 day, you have to basically look at two things. First is attempts, and second is accuracy. Now, you have to look at how many questions you saw and solved, how many questions you saw but didn't solve, and how many questions you didn't get to see at all. Now, this is a very, very big issue. You have to be able to see every question that was in that mock or in the actual exam as well. Because whatever happens, you have to maximize the number of questions that you see in the exam, because the CAT exam is not in order of difficulty. The easiest questions could come in the middle, the easiest questions could come in the end. You don't know where the easiest questions are. But if you don't see all the questions, you won't be able to solve the easiest ones, right? You have to look at all the questions to be able to maximize your score. Now, there are two ways to do this. How do you look at all the questions at least? The first thing you can do is you can glance through the entire paper, identifying the difficulty levels of the questions. So easy would mean questions that you know how to solve, and these are questions that can be solved quickly. Medium would be questions that you perhaps know how to solve, but you haven't solved before, but you have an inkling of how to solve it, or you know how to solve it, but it's a long question. Hard questions would be questions that you don't know how to solve at all. Once you've identified these, you can come back to the easy questions that you've marked out, solve them quickly, move on to the medium questions. And this is basically doing it in iterations or the round strategy. Another one, which a couple of my friends used, but I never did, is setting a time limit to the amount of time that you give to each question. But in this also, I would qualify this by saying, don't set an amount of time for each question. Set it for several questions. For example, say that I will solve 5 questions in 10 minutes, and come what may, if I haven't solved the 5th question by the end of the 10th minute, I will move on. In this case, you'll be able to maintain some accountability for your time. If it's an RC, suppose set the time that you will do it for. You will look at an RC for 8 minutes at max. If it crosses 8 minutes, you will move on. Is this set in stone? No. If you can finish a section faster, if you can finish a set faster, you can go back to the questions that were taking you time later. But you have to get, in a video that I had posted last year, I had said you have to get over your love affair with the questions in CAT. If it's not happening, you have to move on. You cannot at that point be like, nahi, mujhe breakup nahi karna, mujhe ye question solve karna hi karna hai, because that is a terrible idea. Falling in love with any of these questions is going to spell your doom. Don't do it. Set the time limit if that's what's needed, and learn to move on. The second thing I mentioned is accuracy. This refers to finding the questions that you should not have done in this mock, right? And there are several of these questions. They could be ones that you took too much time solving, or that you solved by fluke, that just tukka laga ke you put one answer and it's right. I think someone in my comments had mentioned that their friends were just picking one option and it was coming out correct. I assure you that that is the worst question. You should never attempt it in your life again if you've got it right by fluke. And I think the third criteria under this would be questions that you got wrong. And you have to identify why you got it wrong, but we'll come to that in a bit. Now, why is this so important? Why is it important to identify the questions that you should not have done? In 2 minutes ago, I told you that it's important for you to do all the easy questions. How are you going to do the easy questions? You're going to be able to do the easy questions if you don't do the bad questions. And here, bad for you could be different from bad for me. If I spend too much time in a geometry question, I wouldn't be able to solve 3 easy arithmetic questions. I'm telling you, that is the trade-off that I had in my head. And that's why it's important for you to figure out your accuracy, not that accuracy. If you don't attempt questions that are bad and that are outside your comfort zone, or say outside your zone of possible solving, then you will have better accuracy on your own, right? So now take out a piece of paper and write down the questions that you have to ask yourself about your attempts, or the kinds of questions you have attempted. Was your question selection right in the exam? When you had all the time in the world, you could solve some questions, but did you find easier questions that you didn't attempt in the paper? This go back to the first way of analyzing that I gave you, right? If you had all the time in the world, maybe 15 minutes, you could solve a difficult question. But if you would have avoided that question and looked for easier questions, would you have been able to solve more of the easier questions in the same amount of time? Did you attempt tougher questions that you shouldn't have? Did you pick the wrong RC? It happens a lot of times, right? You pick a really, really difficult RC with just 2 questions at the end of it, and the input-output ratio is not the best for it. Did you have to continuously reread the RC? When you couldn't solve the complete RC in the time limit that you had set for your RC, say 8 minutes, could you at least come down to 2 correct options? What was your order of solving TILR? Did you give up on the test too soon? Did you just give it 1 minute and when it didn't happen, you got frustrated and you moved on? Or did you give in after too long? Did you spend 10 minutes on a set and still kept going and didn't learn to give up when you had to? What was the time limit you set per question? How many rounds did you solve the question in? How many questions did you leave unattempted? How many questions did you start solving but couldn't finish? How many questions did you think were difficult and therefore you moved on? Why did you move on from those questions? Did you not understand the question? Had you not covered it in your preparation? Did you think they were time consuming? All of this is when you try to figure out questions and your attempt strategy. Now, what are the questions that you have to ask yourself regarding accuracy? Did you get the easy questions correct? Was your score the result of a fluke? When you sat down to resolve your paper, could you not solve that same set correctly, which you just managed to solve in the actual exam? How much time did you take per question? Did you use the fastest method to solve the question? Was your mistake a silly mistake or a conceptual error? In verbal, in every question, was your approach logical, or again, was it a fluke? Did you figure out why particular options were wrong, or did you just think that, yeah, I think this option, it's sounding wrong, so it's wrong? Or did you have a reasoning behind why a particular question was wrong? Was it a knowledge error or a speed error? If it's a knowledge error, you have to work on building concepts. If it's a speed error, you have to practice more, or maybe try to solve it in the second iteration. Now, the importance of asking yourself these questions and answering them honestly is that only you can hold yourself accountable for the mocks that you're taking. If you can answer these questions honestly, you know at the end of the day what are the kind of questions you have to attempt in the actual CAT exam. You know what are the questions you definitely have to avoid in the CAT exam. You know the kind of topics that you have to practice before you go into the exam in the 2 hour slots that I've given you, right? Like I've said, on the days that you're not doing mocks or analyzing mocks, you have to spend 2 hours on practice. Are you devoting your time to practicing the correct things? Are you devoting your time to practicing the things that you are good at, but that you need to improve your speed on? Are you practicing or learning concepts that are weak for you? Are you wasting time practicing a topic that you're already good at? Because if you're doing that, it's not really very helpful. You don't have to aim to do a PhD in any of these topics, right? You just have to be able to solve the easy or the medium questions that come from it. If you answer these attempt/accuracy questions for yourself, you will better be able to chart out your preparation. The importance of taking mocks is that it shows you your knowledge gaps, is that it shows you the mistakes in your strategy, and it tells you the areas that you need to improve in. So if you do mocks honestly and if you analyze mocks honestly, it helps you in the preparation stage. How you use your mocks to plan your final CAT strategy, I will make a video on later. But for now, use the next month, use the rest of whatever is left of September and October till say the 26th when I'll post my CAT attempt strategy. Use this 1 month to figure out all your shortcomings and try to bridge the gap between them. Try to figure out areas that you will try to approach in the actual exam. Finalize your strong points, figure out your weak points. And once you have that, you'll have a better hold on things you need to practice. For those of you who don't know, I have a Telegram group in which people are posting their targets every day, and I'm giving them my feedback on whether the targets they're setting for themselves are good or not quite up to the mark, and everything along those lines, like as a sort of motivation almost. You can use your mock analysis to figure out your targets in the long run, right? You can figure out that, okay, I've taken a mock and I've realized that I'm weak at seating arrangements, like I mentioned before. Your strategy then for the rest of the week becomes maybe fixing your knowledge gap in seating arrangements or improving your speed in seating arrangements. You figure out what you need to practice depending on what you are either very, very good at, good at, or bad at in your mocks. And that is how you have to use mocks. Mocks are not just tests to see how well you're performing, right? Mocks are an opportunity for you to improve yourself. And it's all about leveraging your mocks correctly. Yes, mocks, taking lots and lots of mocks will put you in the head zone where the actual exam feels like just another exam to you. But if you use the mocks well, if you analyze your mocks well, if you figure out your weaknesses, your strengths, you will be able to leverage your mocks better. You will be able to figure out your weak points and your strong points. You will know what you need to focus on. You will know what you need to practice. And you will learn what your weaknesses are and what to avoid when it comes to the actual exam. I think that summarizes everything I had to say about this mock analysis video. If you want a CAT attempt strategy video from me, let me know in the comments below, and I will make that very soon and maybe release it in the middle of October. If you have any other videos you would like me to make, let me know in the comments below and I will try to make one on the same. Check out the videos that I've linked in the description box below. I'll try to link a playlist of all the CAT advice I've given, and some motivation videos to make you feel that you should only watch in your free time to make you feel a little more inspired for your future journey. And I will leave a link to the Telegram group in the description box below, so you can join and let us know your targets for every day for the upcoming 2 months, and build a sort of accountability for yourself, and I will try to keep that accountability for you as well. I think that's all I had to say for this video. Like, share, subscribe, comment, ring the notification bell. Let me know if there's any other way in which I can help you, and I will do my best to put out a video like that or address your questions and queries in the comments itself. That's all I had to say, I think. Yeah, best of luck, and I'll see you next time.